The 2026 Formula One season has exploded into controversy, and the cars themselves are only part of the story. A fierce dispute has erupted over the Mercedes power unit, following a dominant 1-2 finish at the Australian Grand Prix, where George Russell and Kimi Antonelli left the entire field trailing. Rival teams began demanding answers. At the center of the storm is something called the compression ratio. Mercedes appears to have engineered a clever solution delivering significant extra power, particularly during qualifying. This has alarmed competitors and even former Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton. The FIA, Formula One's governing body, is now investigating, and this controversy looks set to define the entire 2026 campaign. The technical issue centers on how engine power is measured. The 2026 regulations cap compression ratios at 16:1, a deliberate move to tighten the racing. However, the rules specified this measurement be taken with a cold engine. Mercedes apparently engineered their unit to expand thermally under racing conditions, pushing the ratio from 16:1 cold to roughly 18:1 at full temperature. Max Verstappen estimates this trick is worth around 30 horsepower, equivalent to approximately 0.3 of a second per lap. In Formula One, that margin is enormous. Lewis Hamilton, now driving for Ferrari, was among the first to publicly raise concerns. After Melbourne qualifying, where the Mercedes cars were nearly a full second clear of everyone else, he voiced alarm. "I hope it's not this compression ratio thing," he said, warning that if Mercedes maintained such an advantage, the championship would effectively be over before summer. He added that even modest gains compounded across 7 races translates into an insurmountable points gap. Hamilton stated he would be deeply disappointed in the FIA if they permitted it to continue, and admitted he would pressure Ferrari to explore the same approach. Customer teams running Mercedes engines were equally stunned. McLaren, Williams, and Alpine all received the same power unit, yet found themselves nowhere near the factory squad's pace. Williams team principal James Vowles admitted Mercedes' approach caught them completely off guard, estimating the gap at around 0.3. McLaren boss Andrea Stella echoed that assessment, noting the disparity only became fully apparent during qualifying. His conclusion was revealing. The engine hardware is identical, but Mercedes possesses exclusive knowledge about maximizing its performance that they simply are not passing on to customers. This leaves customer teams paying premium prices while operating with incomplete instructions, fueling enormous frustration and calls for mandatory technical transparency between manufacturers and their partners. The FIA responded swiftly to the avalanche of protests. Starting from the Monaco Grand Prix in June, engine measurements will be conducted at operating temperature, effectively closing the loophole Mercedes exploited. This creates a fascinating split-season dynamic. The opening 7 rounds become a sprint for Mercedes to bank as many championship points as possible before the advantage disappears. Every race between now and Monaco carries dramatically elevated stakes, transforming what would normally be early-season skirmishes into potentially season-defining battles. But Mercedes is also playing a subtler strategic game beyond simply winning races. The 2026 regulations include an additional development and upgrade allowance, known as the ADU, designed to prevent permanent engine hierarchies. Teams whose engines measure between 2 and 4% slower than the benchmark earn 1 mid-season upgrade token. Those more than 4% adrift receive 2. Mercedes is now reportedly managing their performance ceiling deliberately, staying dominant enough to win comfortably while avoiding margins so extreme that Ferrari and Red Bull qualify for free upgrade opportunities. It is a coldly calculated approach, fighting not just on track, but through the rulebook itself, and it has intensified tensions between the major teams considerably. The atmosphere among drivers reflects the broader drama. George Russell, fresh from his Australian victory, quipped that sharing a flight to Shanghai with Hamilton meant enduring a constant stream of complaints about his supposedly illegal engine. His suggested response to Hamilton: "Stop worrying about others and concentrate on your own car." The exchange illustrated how deeply this dispute has permeated the paddock, reaching beyond engineers and team principals directly into the cockpits. Sky Sports analyst Bernie Collins offered a more nuanced technical perspective, cautioning against attributing everything solely to the compression ratio. Had that been the only factor, she argued, all four Mercedes-powered teams would be competing at the sharp end of the grid, which clearly is not happening. Her analysis suggests Mercedes' true advantage is a holistic package: the engine, aerodynamic philosophy, and sophisticated hybrid energy deployment working in precise harmony. That complexity is precisely what makes it so difficult for rivals to replicate. Copying one element is manageable. Reverse engineering an entire integrated philosophy without insider knowledge is a fundamentally different challenge, and one that customer teams are not equipped to undertake alone. What Mercedes has done occupies that familiar gray zone so characteristic of Formula One's long history. The rules simply did not anticipate this specific scenario, leaving engineers free to exploit the gap. That is both the sport's greatest frustration and its most enduring fascination. Regulations written by humans will always contain spaces that sufficiently creative engineers can find and inhabit. Whether the FIA should have anticipated this particular loophole is debated hotly. Hamilton argues regulators failed in their duty of foresight. Others counter that no set of rules can perfectly predict every innovation a determined team might devise. The political fallout will reverberate through team principal meetings for months. Every faction will arrive defending its own interests fiercely, and whatever compromise the FIA engineers, somebody will leave the table dissatisfied. That negotiation, conducted in glass-walled conference rooms rather than on asphalt, may ultimately influence the championship as profoundly as anything that happens during the races themselves. The next several rounds are therefore unmissable. Mercedes must maximize their points haul before the Monaco measurement change levels the playing field. Their rivals must minimize the damage while preparing whatever technical responses they can muster in time. Whether the gap closes dramatically after Monaco or whether Mercedes has already built an insurmountable lead will determine whether 2026 delivers a genuine championship fight or a prolonged coronation. Either way, the compression ratio saga has already guaranteed that this season will be remembered as one of the most politically charged and technically fascinating in the sport's history.